No two individuals are alike. They differ in size, shape, appearance, interest, attitude, aptitude, etc. The rate of learning is different for two individuals. Some learn easily and quickly, while some learn very slowly. Auto-instructional materials or self-instructional materials are highly useful in this case. Programmed instruction is one such self-instructional material. Now we shall see some definitions of programmed instruction. According to Edgar Dale, programmed learning is a systematic, step-by-step, self-instructional program aimed to ensure the learning of stated behavior. According to B.F. Skinner, a programmed instruction is the breaking down of learning materials to be learned into easy steps, arranging steps in logical order with no gaps, making sure the student understands one step before moving to another, and then instantly making sure that he is successful. Psychological base of programmed learning. Edward L. Thorndike, Law of Effect. Ivan Pavlov, Classical Conditioning. B.F. Skinner, Operant Conditioning. Socrates is regarded as one of the earliest programmers. He developed a program in geometry. This was recorded by Plato, his disciple, in the dialogue Meno. By the middle of 1920, Sidney L. Plessy developed teaching machine. In 1954, Professor B.F. Skinner developed linear or extrinsic programming. And in 1955, Norman A. Crowder developed branched or intrinsic programming. Characteristics of programmed instruction. The objectives are explained clearly to ensure the measurement of attainability of the terminal. The subject matter, broken into small steps or frames, are arranged sequentially. Here you can see the subject matter is broken into physics, mathematics and politics. The subject matter physics is again broken into 7 bits. 1. Gravity. 2. Force. 3. Energy. 4. Heat. 5. Work. 6. Density. And 7. The complexity and depth of information increases on moving from initial frame to final frame. That means the second topic, force, is more complicated when compared to first bit of information, namely gravity. And the last one, atoms, is the most abstract and complicated topic among these. Now the fourth characteristic. A bit of information is given to the learner at. Here you can see among the 7 segments of knowledge, the first bit of information, that is gravity, is taken. The first bit of information, gravity, alone is given to the learner to study. The learner learns the information given at his own pace. That means there may be quick and slow learners in a class, but each one can progress at one's own speed. After learning the bit of information, the learner has to give response to the question provided. In our example, after studying the first bit of information, that is gravity, the learner is given a question. What makes things fall down? The learner responds, gravity. After responding, the learner is provided with immediate feedback. Here you can see that the learner's response is confirmed by saying that, yes, you are correct. Next we shall see the fundamental principles of programmed learning. There are 5 basic principles of programmed learning. The 5 basic principles are principle of small steps, principle of active responding, principle of immediate reinforcement, principle of self-pacing and principle of student. Now we shall discuss the principles one by one. The first and foremost principle, the principle of small steps. It means that the subject matter of the program is broken down into small steps and these steps are arranged in a logical manner. Only one of the steps, which is called frame, is given to the learner at a time. This principle is based on the assumption that even a dull student can learn as a bright student if the subject matter is given in small steps. Second principle, the principle of active responding. A learner learns better if he actively participates in the teaching learning process. Here, a learner is made to respond actively when he is working on the program. Next is the principle of immediate reinforcement. Programmed instruction provides immediate feedback on the response made by the learner. If a learner makes a correct response, his response is confirmed. When he is wrong, he gets a chance of knowing the right answer. The law of effect is operational in. Then comes the principle of self-pacing. Each student can progress at his own pace or speed, that is, rate of learning with respect to individual difference. The fifth principle is the principle of student testing. Programmed instruction provides a constant evaluation through the record of learner's response. The quality of the program can be improved through the checking of errors at each step, and the learner's progress can be evaluated by checking various types of response by the learner. Program writing. Program writing involves three stages. First one, preparation. Second, writing the program. And third, tryout and revision. Advantages and limitations of programmed instruction. Advantages. 1. The instruction is individualized. 2. Each student can proceed at his own pace. 3. It keeps the student active throughout the program. 4. Immediate feedback of the response is possible. 5. It can be used at any time. Limitations. 1. The teacher-student relationship is completely lost in programmed learning. 2. It restricts the learner's imagination and initiativeness. 3. There is no scope for speech learning when language learning is considered. Styles of programming. 1. Linear programming. 2. Branched programming. 3. Mathematics programming. These represents the actual basic formats. The fourth style, namely the roles system of program, is developed by Evans, Homer and Glaser. In this session, I will be dealing with two types of programming. Types of programming. Linear programming by B.F. Skinner and branched programming by Norman A. Kraus. Linear program. Linear program. It is also called Skinnerian programming or straight line programming or extrinsic programming. B.F. Skinner is the proponent of linear programming. Hence, linear program is also called Skinnerian programming. It is called straight line programming because the learner begins from his initial behavior or entry behavior and moves to the terminal behavior following a straight line. Since the programmer controls the path of the learner, it is called extrinsic programming. Procedure of linear programming. Initial or entry behavior, final or terminal behavior. In this program, here you can see that the learner starts from the initial or entry behavior, follows a straight line and ultimately reaches the final or terminal behavior. The material is arranged in a single ordered sequence. Every learner proceeds from the beginning or first frame to the end or last frame in the same manner. It is just like the movement of ants All of them will follow the same path. Procedure of linear programming. F1, F2, F3, etc. represents the frames. Fn is the last frame. Each frame will contain a bit of information followed by a question based on that information. Student has to give constructed response. The correct answer to the question is given in the next frame. That means the answer to the question given in frame 1 will be given in frame 2 and so on. Frames. Each frame except the first and last frames have a common pattern. That is, frame number, correct answer to previous frame, a new bit of information, questions based on the above information, space for response, cue or hint. It may or may not be present. Characteristics of linear programming. Every learner follows the same path. The size of each frame is small. The path of the learner is controlled by the programmer extrinsically. Since small amount of information is given to students followed by its testing, chances of making mistakes is practically eliminated. Advantages of linear programming. Motivator. Immediate knowledge of results act as a great motivator. Reduces stress. Immediate confirmation of results release anxiety, stress and tension. Attainability of goals. The frame is small and brings the sub-goals within the reach of the learner. Mastery learning. Repetition strengthens the responses and ensures. Limitations of linear programming. Entry behavior. Exact entry behavior of each learner cannot be considered. Specific locating. Searching of a particular material is not possible as in the case of a textbook. Learner response. The learner has limited freedom of response. Difference in response are not treated differently. Wrong responses are avoided in the program. No remedy is provided for them. Stereotype pattern. Following the same pattern throughout may lead to monotony and boredom. Time factor. Each student proceeds at his own rate. It can lead to time consumption. Failure of theory. Programming is based on learning theories which were formulated by experiments conducted on animals. A human being is more intelligent than animals. He has got an intelligent brain. Skip linear program. Characteristics and procedure of skip linear program. It is same as linear program. Learner is given a test question at certain points. Each correct response of the learner leads him or her to some succeeding frames by skipping certain frames in the normal sequence. Procedure of skip linear programming. F1, F2, F3, F4, F5, etc. represents frames. Here, the learner makes a correct response in frame 2, that is F2. So, he is led to frame 5 or F5, thereby skipping frames 3 and 4. Now moving on to the next part, branched programming. Branched program. Branched program. It is also called Crowderian programming or intrinsic programming. Norman A. Crowder is the originator of branched program. Hence it is known as Crowderian programming. It is called intrinsic programming because the response of the learner fixes the route and it is learner controlled or intrinsic. In a branching program, there is more than one route or sequence through which the material is arranged. The learner follows the sequence determined by his own answer. A correct response to a question may lead the learner to a route that skips several questions. while an incorrect response leads to a route on which each of these questions must be answered. This practice of providing alternate routes through the program is called branching. Definition. According to Norman A. Crowder, a branched program is a program which adapts to the needs of the student without the medium of extrinsic device as a computer. It is called intrinsic because the learner himself makes the decision to adapt the instruction to his or her needs. Basis of frame formation: exposition, diagnosis, and remediation. Types of frames in branched program. Main frame, it is for teaching and diagnosis. Remedial frame, it is for remediation. Frames in branched program. In branching program, each frame is relatively bigger in size compared to linear programming, maybe a paragraph or even a page. It may contain 2 or 3 related ideas. A single multiple choice type question is asked at the end and the student selects the response. How the learner proceeds when he answers multiple choice question correctly. If the learner gives correct answer for MCQ, he or she is directed to the next frame in the main teaching sequence. Sometimes he or she may be led to skip several frames or questions. How the learner proceeds when he answers MCQ incorrectly. If the learner makes a wrong response, he is taken to a remedial frame. What is done in a remedial frame? In the remedial frame, the learner's mistake is explained. The topic under study is explained again with new learning experience. After remediation, where will the learner go? After remedial work, the learner is directed to the original frame for making another attempt. According to the answer selected by the learner, he is directed to go to the particular page or frame. In branching program, all the learners do not follow the same path. This practice of providing alternate routes through the program is called. The basic principle of branching is that different students need different materials for learning and learning occurs by committing errors. Scrambled book. The frames of branching program when presented in book form is called scrambled book. Here, the frames are not arranged in normal sequence. It could be read only in response to the choice of the learner's answer. Now let us have a look at the frames in branched programming. Frames. In branched programming, there are 2 types of frames. One is the main frame and the other one is the remedial frame. Main frame. Repeating student response, positive confirmation, new information, question, alternative answers followed by directions to the learner to go to relevant page. Remedial frame. Repeating the student response, negative confirmation, reasons as to why he is wrong, further explanation, perhaps with new learning experience, direction as to where the learner should go next. Procedure of branched programming. F1, F2, F3 and F4 represents the main frames. RF represents the remedial frame. Here you can see RF11 and RF12 corresponds to the remedial frames of the main frame F1. Similarly, RF21 and RF22 corresponds to the remedial frames of the main frame F2 and so on. Main features of branching program. The frame size is large compared to linear program. The path of the learner is in accordance with his response. It is learner controlled or intrinsic in nature. Individual difference in learning is given priority. Advantages of branching program. Saves time. In branched program, unnecessary repetition and responding are avoided. Acknowledges learning deficiency. Remedial frame explains why the response has gone wrong along with explaining the matter afresh with new learning experiences. Caters to individual differences. Branching program is useful when the programmer knows that the learner's entry behavior are different. Limitations of branching program. Cannot cover all topics. As the content matter is too large, it is not possible to ask questions from all the topics. Fail to meet individual needs. Branching cannot cater to the needs of all individuals. Not applicable to small children. Branching cannot be used for small class children. Expensive. Preparation of the program is expensive. Types of branching programs. 1. Forward branching. 2. Backward branching. Forward branching program. Forward branching. In forward branching, whether the learner makes correct response or wrong response, he will always be advancing to a new frame. When the learner makes a correct response, he can go directly to the new frame. When the learner makes a wrong response, he is directed to a remedial frame where his mistakes are clarified and corrected. Then the learner attempts a question parallel in objective, content and difficulty that is comparable to the original frame for which the learner made an incorrect response. The learner subsequently goes to the next frame in the mainstream. Procedure of forward branching program. F1, F2, F3, F4 represents the main frames. R1, R2, R3 represents the remedial frames. Here, if the learner makes a correct response in the main frame F1, he can directly go to the main frame F2. If his response is wrong, he is directed to the remedial frame R1 where his mistake is corrected and then goes to the main frame F2. Similarly, in the case of other main frames also. Backward branching program. Backward branching. In backward branching, the learner goes from the first frame to the second frame only if he makes correct response. If the learner makes a wrong response, he is directed to the remedial frame. In the remedial frame, the learner is explained the matter afresh, giving new learning experience for better understanding of the concept. The learner answers the parallel question on the basis of remedial instruction received. He is directed to the same main frame once again. Thus, in backward branching program, the learner goes through the same frame twice, once before the remedial material and second after the remedial material. It motivates and helps the student to identify what he missed in the first attempt. Procedure of backward branching program. F1, F2, F3, F4 represents the main frames. R1, R2, R3 represents the remedial frames. In backward branching, if the learner makes a correct response in the main frame F1, he can go directly to the main frame F2. If his response is wrong, he is directed to the remedial frame R1 and then again to the main frame F1 itself. Only after making the correct response in F1, he can proceed to the main frame F2. Similarly, in other frames also. Differences between linear and branching programming. The proponent of linear programming is B.F. Skinner, whereas the proponent of branched programming is Norman A. Crowder. The path of the learner in linear programming is a straight line, whereas it is branched in branched programming. Fixing of the learner's path is done by the programmer in linear programming, hence it is extrinsic. Fixing of the learner's path in branched programming is done by the learner himself, and so it is intrinsic. Linear programming has more number of steps, whereas the number of steps is less in branched programming. The size of the steps is small with 1 or 2 sentences in linear programming. The branched program has large steps, usually paragraph or even a page. The type of response in linear programming is constructed type response, whereas it is multiple choice type in branched programming. In linear programming, there is no remedial frame, whereas remedial frames are present in both forward and backward branched programming. In linear programming, no remediation is given for wrong response, whereas remediation is provided for branched programming. In linear programming, reinforcement is given for correctness of response. In branched programming, ultimate correctness of response is reinforced. The frame is linear book for linear programming, whereas it is scrambled text for branched programming. In linear programming, the subject matter is broken down into small bits of information. In branched programming, broader concepts of information are given. Purpose of learning in linear programming is fixing of learning. In branched programming, the purpose is measuring of learning. Rate of error for linear programming is less than 5%, whereas it is 20% in general for branched programming. BRANIER style program. BRANIER style programming. It is also called hybrid style programming or mixed style programming. BRANIER style programming. It is a combination of branching and linear programming. For evaluation, please visit B.Ed MCQ Set 18 and B.Ed MCQ Set 19 on YouTube channel Dr.Reshmi KS. The link is given here and also in the description. Thanks for watching.